The great hall of the starship Varlin Prime echoed with soft mechanical hums, as dozens of alien officers gathered around long crystal tables discussing the latest diplomatic routes, while Evan, the only human on board, sat near the corner with his small toolkit trying to fix a communication device that refused to behave the way it should. The aliens were used to his calm presence, but they still watched him with a mixture of curiosity and respect, because humans, though physically smaller than many species, had a strange kind of confidence that made even the bravest warrior pause. As the meeting continued, the tall doors at the far end suddenly shook, causing everyone to fall silent, and the atmosphere changed so quickly that the air seemed colder. A heavy thud echoed across the hall, then another, and then the doors burst open as a large predator creature stepped inside, its silhouette outlined by flashing warning lights. The aliens gasped in fear, some stumbling backward, others hiding behind pillars and equipment, whispering hurried guesses about why such a creature had come here of all places. Evan felt the vibrations under his feet but did not rise. He simply tilted his head, keeping his eyes on the tiny wires in his hand. The creature marched forward, each step steady and purposeful, its gaze scanning every corner of the hall, and the aliens whispered nervously that maybe it was searching for someone important. Everyone expected Evan to panic or hide, but instead he just sighed quietly as if the whole situation was more of an interruption than a danger. The creature's attention finally locked onto him, and the aliens held their breath thinking that the human would finally run. But Evan only lifted his gaze once, meeting the creature's eyes with a calm expression, and said in a steady voice that echoed across the hall, "Not mine." The aliens blinked in confusion. None of them understood what he meant, and the creature paused as if it was surprised too, then turned its head slightly to look around the hall again. Evan returned to his device, twisting a small tool with careful focus, while the creature continued scanning the room until its gaze stopped on the far right corner, where a high-ranking alien officer stood frozen behind a pillar. The officer's face turned pale as he realized he had been found, and the whispers in the room rose again, filled with confusion and fear because now the meaning behind Evan's words became clearer. The creature was not here for the human at all. The creature began to move toward the officer, and several aliens called out warnings, but their voices shook too much for their words to sound confident. The officer stumbled backward, bumping into the wall, unable to look away from the creature's focused stare. Evan finally stood up, stretching his back as if he was preparing to check something routine rather than respond to a tense confrontation, and he walked at a calm pace across the hall toward the unfolding scene. The aliens watched him with wide eyes, wondering what the human thought he could do, since no one had ever seen Evan raise his voice or react strongly to anything. Yet something about his calmness made the atmosphere shift again, and the creature itself seemed to slow its steps when it noticed the human approaching. Evan stopped a few feet away, placing his hands in his pockets as he studied both the officer and the creature with the same neutral expression, and the aliens held their breath because they sensed Evan knew something they did not. The officer shook as if carrying a secret too heavy to keep hidden, and Evan looked directly at him with a quiet seriousness that made the alien feel even smaller. The creature lowered its posture slightly, waiting, watching, listening, and the entire hall became so silent that even the soft hum of the ship's engine sounded louder than usual. Evan spoke again in a calm tone, not accusing or angry, but simply stating that running would not help, and the creatures of that species did not travel this far without a reason. The officer's hands trembled as he tried to gather words that refused to come out, and the aliens realized there was more behind this sudden arrival than anyone had understood. The creature's gaze shifted from the officer to Evan, then back again, as if trying to confirm something, and Evan nodded slightly as though he recognized a meaning that others missed. The officer looked like he was about to collapse from nervous tension, and the part ends with Evan taking one step forward, preparing to speak again, while the creature closes the distance inch by inch, and the entire hall waits in total silence for the truth to finally come out. Marcus did not move as the predator marched closer, its metal boots tapping sharply against the floor, and the soldiers outside the hall listened in silence, waiting for a sign that the human was in danger. But Marcus only lowered his wrench slowly and stared at the intruder with a calm expression that did not match the fear crawling across everyone else's faces. The predator stopped a few feet away from him, its shadow spreading over the scattered tools, and the hall lights flickered as if the air itself tightened with tension. But Marcus remained still, giving the creature nothing but a confused frown, and the predator tilted its head again, scanning him from head to toe as if trying to understand why this human showed no fear, and for a long moment neither of them spoke, until the predator released a low sound that made the guards outside tighten their weapons. But Marcus simply sighed and said, "Look, if something is lost, it is not mine, and if you are looking for trouble, you came to the wrong place." A line that clearly puzzled the alien because it leaned closer as if analyzing every word, and the hall's energy sensors beeped as its armor began glowing faintly, detecting remnants of some trail that led through the hall, and Marcus finally understood that the alien was not hunting him, but following something that had passed by minutes ago, something moving fast and leaving traces of high-temperature residue. He lifted a charred piece of metal nearby and noticed the same pattern burned on its surface, so he held it up and said, "Whatever came through here, it wasn't me." And the predator's eyes brightened, confirming his guess, then stepped past him without hesitation, moving toward the back exit. But before it could leave, Marcus hesitated and then followed, because part of him felt responsible for the station's safety, even if he had always kept to himself, and he called out, "Wait, I can help you track it," which made the predator pause and glance back with an expression that almost looked surprised, but after a moment it nodded once, accepting the offer silently, and the two of them walked through the dim corridors while alarms began flashing across the station map, showing that something dangerous had begun spreading through the lower levels. Marcus and the predator reached a damaged control door, and with a few quick repairs from Marcus and a powerful pull from the predator, the door slid open to reveal a long passage filled with scorch marks, like something burning hot had scraped across the floor. And as they stepped inside, a sudden rumble shook the metal walls, followed by a low roar that vibrated in Marcus's chest, and he realized the creature the predator was chasing was far more dangerous than anything the engineers had expected. So he tightened his grip on his wrench and whispered, "I hope you know what you're doing," though the predator only replied with a brief click that Marcus guessed meant confidence. Deeper inside, they found a hole torn through the deck plates, leading into the old ventilation shafts, and Marcus reluctantly climbed down after the predator, both moving carefully through the narrow, echoing tunnels, until they reached an open chamber where bright sparks flew from hanging wires and steam hissed from ruptured pipes. And in the middle of that chaos stood a massive creature made of dark metal and molten lines running across its body like lava, its claws scraping the floor as it turned to face them, and Marcus whispered, "So that's what you were chasing?" And the predator nodded, raising its arm cannon while the creature let out another roar that shook dust from the ceiling. The predator fired the first shot, sending a blast of energy across the chamber, but the creature twisted aside with unnatural speed and slammed its tail against the metal wall, sending waves of heat across the room. And Marcus ducked behind a broken panel, trying to think of a way to help because hiding would not solve anything. So he scanned the room and noticed a pressure valve shaking violently, and an idea flashed in his mind, one that was risky, but might give the predator an opening. He crawled toward the valve while the predator held the creature as attention with fast attacks and quick dodges, and as Marcus reached the valve, he slammed his wrench into it, releasing a burst of cold vapor that spread across the chamber, cooling the air sharply and making the creature's molten lines dim for a moment, which the predator noticed instantly, using that second to fire a powerful blast straight at its chest, sending the creature crashing backward into a broken support beam. And as it tried to stand, Marcus released another burst of cold vapor that slowed it further, giving the predator the chance to leap forward and strike it with a final blow that made the entire floor shake. The creature collapsed, its molten glow fading slowly, and the chamber finally fell silent except for the sound of leaking pipes and Marcus's shaky breathing. And the predator looked at Marcus with something close to respect, before tapping its chest plate lightly, perhaps a gesture of thanks. And Marcus gave a tired smile and replied, "Glad it wasn't a mine," repeating the line he had said earlier, but this time with a touch of humor. The predator then turned and walked toward the exit, stopping only once to look back as if acknowledging Marcus as an unexpected ally, and Marcus watched it disappear into the shadows of the corridor, knowing that life on the station would return to normal soon, but also realizing that he had been part of something far bigger than his quiet routine. And as he picked up his wrench and headed back toward the hall, he could not help but think that maybe, just maybe, the universe had more strange adventures waiting for him, whether he asked for them or not.